So today we're talking about parenting and remote work.
And first of all, I'm just going to go like this. Ooh, I know some people are very happy to be spending all this time with their children, which there are some happiness things about it.
I'm having a blast. My kids are 10 and 11 and pretty self-motivated. And
yeah, mine's 11, so she's super easy and I don't have to work very hard at that at all.
I don't know. I think that is the greatest thing ever on the planet. I love it. I wish it wasn't because of a global pandemic.
Well, I decided years ago that being a stay-at-home mom, not for me. So, although my kid is super chill, that's what makes it great. But if she was like 2 or maybe 5, I would probably be a little more, or learning to read where she'd really need a lot of support on the schooling. I think I would be like,
could be.
That would be crazy. Did you want to talk about the context a little bit as far as like the other kinds of parenting going on?
Yep. So we today are going to talk about remote work and parenting, people who are working at home, also trying to help their kids through education. Or if you have tiny kids and you're trying to, I've got a girlfriend who's potty training a 3-year-old and on Zoom calls for
That's why you go to work, so you don't have to do that half the time.
Yeah, international Zoom calls like for 5 hours of the day.
Oh my God.
And so there's a lot of people overwhelmed with this remote work and parenting, but we thought that it would be wise, and we would be remiss not to say that there are people in other situations too that are equally as stressful, if not more stressful. First responders who have children have had to either find different daycare because they don't want to spread it around their daycare, or their daycare is closed. And we have also first responders who are just choosing not to see their family because they're worried that they'll spread it to their loved ones. And I don't mean like their parents or grandparents. I mean like literally their spouse and their children in their own home. They're sleeping in their cars outside of the hospital and not going home. So there are lots of different situations that people are in, and we didn't want to make it appear as though we are so narrow-sighted that we only thought that this was stressful.
This was the thing, right? Yeah. But I think the interesting thing about that, though, is that I think that's part of the challenge, right? Is that you know that other people are like staying in hotels because they can't see their family, and they're working 20-hour shifts to try to save people. And then you're feeling like your situation is hard. And you're like, well, I know there's people out there with harder situations, but that doesn't really invalidate, or you shouldn't feel guilty about struggling with whatever situation you're in, because frankly, most people don't deal well with change, especially one that is not your choice. And so that plays all kinds of head games, and with the health situation and not knowing what advice to follow. Do you go out, or do you stay home, or you never go home, never leave again, and all of that. So normal stress around change is layered on top of all of this other nonsense. So we just thought we would come on and give you some ideas and tips about how to think about balancing. It's all life. We say it's all life, work and home. And how do you make all of that work right now? And I do want to say, if you have specific questions or a specific situation at your house, and you're like, listen, whatever else you're going to say, I need you to think, help me with this thing. You just put it in there and we will talk through it. Okay.
In the chat.
In the chat. Yeah. So at the bottom, do the chat thing, and then we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. So I think we'll start with part of the conversation Rachel and I had was our environment has changed drastically. So our home office is also the place where you might lay down a baby and change a diaper, is also the place where you're checking to see if someone's oatmeal is done that they've made for themselves in the microwave.
Right.
It's also the place where your dog happens to lay, or whatever is going on. So really the first tip is, or the first place to start is, rethink what your perfect day would look like. So what do you really expect to have happen? What do you want your household to look like? What do you want your kids to look like or act like, or how do you want to support them? What time you're going to spend with them? What do you think your workday can really look like? Not what somebody's trying to push you to do, or not what what you what you feel guilty about not getting done. Like, what can you actually feel good about getting done and feel good in balance, both as a mom or a dad, and also as an employee. So really thinking about, in this new environment that we're in right now, potentially for a while, what does a good day look like? What things do you want to get done? And Rachel had a suggestion about how you could kind of think about that, like an actual tool to get it done.
Yeah. Can I bring that up later? Because I have something else on this I'd like to mention.
Well, yeah.
And I think the other thing too is to realize that, as Meg mentioned, it's different, but it's also, you get to new COVID world means that you also get to change some rules. So maybe you're a diehard, only an hour of screen time a day, or a diehard, you have to go outside for 2 hours every day and play, or whatever. Well, you know what? Maybe some days are 8-hour TV days. Or maybe some days are, listen, I have to be on a 2-hour call. You're just going to sit in front of Elmo for 2 hours and you'll be happy about that. So it's really important to think about, what are some of the rules that you have in place before COVID that really don't make sense for how you have to now live in this new context. And you can always snap back to those, as soon as daycare starts coming and summer programs might be coming up and all of that. Just remember that you get to relax your rules because they don't necessarily serve you or your family right now. So that's a really important thing to remember.
Yeah, and a good way to think about, that's a great point. A good way to think about or discover what those rules are, because they become so ingrained as part of our life, we don't really know we have these rules. Right. Think about what you feel guilty about.
That might be a really long list right now.
Yeah, well, maybe just do top 5. Think about, if you feel guilty about letting your kids watch TV because, well, I said I wasn't going to let them watch TV. Well, in this new environment, perhaps that is more necessary. Maybe it's that, maybe you had a rule, maybe you feel guilty because you don't make a full-on meal, 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week, or maybe you don't. This was my thing. Here's my guilty thing. Not having a vegetable with every meal in the evening. I have a huge, illogical issue with that. So I have decided, since we literally make dinner every night, there are no exceptions. Some nights, you know what? There's not going to be a damn green thing on the table. And that I have to be okay with.
Good job.
Yeah. So, and it's these little things like this. So think about the things that make you feel guilty. Because for one person, it might be, Rachel is pro-gluten. And so maybe she doesn't like salad. Maybe she never cares about having something green. So that might not be her thing. She might have a different thing. And so it doesn't matter what anybody else's thing is. Think about what your things are. What do you feel guilty about? And then how can you modify what that looks like to make sense for this environment that we're in now?
Yeah, and a big part, I think, of what we feel guilty about in a broader context is, which is our next sort of contextual point, is if you are an ass kicker at home or an ass kicker at work, and you're super high performer and you're doing all of that, and then you get home and you love spending time with your family. This is pre-COVID, and then you love spending time with your family, and all of a sudden, all of that gets put in a bottle and shaken up. And it doesn't look anything like how you thrived before. So what you really have to do is let go of the idea that you're going to be the best person at work, and you're going to be the best person at home, and you're going to have I got to get an hour workout every single day, and list the things, right? The things that we felt accomplishment before also and served us also might not be serving us now. So if you feel like, well, I got to get 8 hours in, and I have to take care of potty train my 3-year-old, then you might be failing at everything, and that makes you feel like crap. So find the one thing a day, or find the couple things that you can feel like ways you can thrive. Maybe it's, I'm going to get up a little early. I'm going to keep my kid up a little later so they sleep later. And so I'm going to do a couple hours in the morning. Or listen, I know that nap time is a thing. And so an hour before nap and then nap time, I'm going to try to get some work in because I'm going to put the kid in front of the TV. Or the homeschooling thing. I know this is really frustrating for some people. And can you dedicate time to homeschool, but keep it small? If you have a little kid, like some people are getting way too much work, and maybe you can push back on the teachers. I don't know, but find a way to kind of restructure your day so you can feel like you get some wins. Because if all it is a slog and a misery, and you feel like you're failing at everything, then it's never going to feel good. And no one's ever going to, like, if mama ain't happy, or dad in this case, nobody's happy, it's the same way. So they will feed off of you. So if your kids, so if you feel like you're miserable and unhappy all the time, they're going to reflect that back. So you've got to start thinking about restructuring your day in a different way.
Yeah. So here's the trick that I use for that when I'm running races. So I'm a marathoner. And so if I ran 5.5 miles this morning, and it was really miserable. I don't know why, some days are good, some days are bad. But if I'm running a 5-mile training run or an actual marathon, if I'm really slogging through it and it just is feeling awful, the more you think about that, as Rachel pointed out, the worse you feel about it. You start to feel guilty and you feel like, God, I didn't train enough, or I didn't do enough of whatever thing. So a way to convert that mindset so that you can feel more successful and have more wins is to, I say, make it the plan, not the enemy. So this morning, as an example, there were just I had 4 moments where my heart rate was up. I felt hot and gross. I think I was dehydrated. So I just thought, you know what? I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk until my heart rate gets down to a reasonable rate, and then I'll start running again. And I actively decided to make that the plan instead of every time I stopped to walk because I just couldn't run anymore. I felt like, God, I'm such a loser. So start thinking about how you can make things that aren't working now more part of your plan instead of making it the enemy. Because the more you think about that as the enemy, and that I got to hold on to these things the way life used to be, the harder it's going to be for a longer amount of time.
Yeah, one of the big changes, and we've sort of alluded to it a little bit, and Meg referenced the plan, is to have a plan. So a lot of us we're not used to spending all this time with our kids. We're not used to having to be their teacher. We're not used to having to integrate work into the day somehow while with our kids around. So having a plan is really critical. What we see in the corporate side is that people are kind of cut loose to work from home, but there isn't really a plan. Like there's no check-ins or very few. There's no communication really. You can feel really isolated. You don't feel connected. And so what we're advising all across the board, I don't care what your situation, is that if the more structure you can put into place, the happier people will be, because right now everything feels chaotic. And so if you don't have a plan, then it feels even more nuts. So if you can just take some of the chaos out of your kid's life and your schedule, then it feels a little better, right? So one of the things that I do with my 11-year-old, again, 11 easy, she comes to the office with me and works on her homework in the morning, or schoolwork, she's not really homework, schoolwork in the morning. And we have a little spreadsheet or a little piece of paper that we sort of sketch out what her classes are. And then she gets a little star when she gets done her stuff. So then it's kind of a throwback to like what your teachers used to do, right? Or what the teachers might do still, I don't know. Keeping track. And if you get 10 gold stars, maybe you get a treat or a special thing, and that gives them a sense of accomplishment. And then it also puts you in more of a mode of, this is just about checking boxes instead of it's about some big story about what a good parent or teacher I am. And so Alex is with me in the morning and we have that structure. And then I know to check in. Hey, you don't have anything done for science today. What's that look like? What do you need help with it? And then in the afternoon, she goes with my partner, and he handles her all afternoon, and they're never in front of a computer. So that's kind of how we balance it. So that's how we do it. I think, hi Shandy. I think my issue, I try to make a plan, but also be flexible if it's a lazy day or busy work day. So my question would be to you, how does your daughter know what day that's going to be? Because a lot of times so the plan is a fail. So a lot of times we roll with things in a way that as a parent, we kind of know what's going on, but our kids don't really understand that we're being flexible as we go because of new complicated things that might come up. Or like, let's say that your kid's not getting something or is learning how to read, and you're just like, you're both pissed at each other. My mom used to try to help me with math. It's a huge mistake. So maybe it's maybe call your maybe it's a couple things might be going on. Maybe you need more support as your kid's teacher, and then reach out to their teacher and say, listen, I know you mentioned today that your kid loved going to school, or on Facebook at some point, and that you feel like is really a bummer. So can you reach out to her teacher and say, what are you doing in the classroom that I could replicate here? Maybe that's the STAR system or the reading corner. I don't know. Can you get some ideas about how to replicate what the teacher does in the classroom that is clearly resonating so much with your kid? Any thoughts about her?
Yeah, I think that it depends on, so Rachel's daughter is a very structured individual.
Oh, that's right.
She's what we call in our world culture types. She's more order tolerant. I have, of my two girls, one of them is very order tolerant, and the other one is not at all. She's pretty chaos tolerant, or I should say, really, it's more that she creates chaos. She doesn't like anybody else creating chaos for her, but
she likes freedom.
Yeah. So what I did to kind of balance that between my two girls is, again, my kids are older, but you can mimic this for younger children in the way that it makes sense for younger children. I created a schedule for them, and I said, you can either follow this schedule exactly. So there's, whatever, school time in the morning, and then go outside and play if it's nice, and then chores, and then more school time, and then whatever. I said, you can either follow this to a T if you'd like, or you can modify it based on the weather, if it's nicer in the afternoon than it is in the morning, or you can modify it based on the amount of homework you have for the day. So I think that there are ways too that you can build flexibility in, but still have some accountability to what needs to be done. And so maybe it's, you marry those two ideas, that you have the chart with the gold stars, and then they can be responsible for getting it done whenever they get it done. And I think, with little kids, we talk about this in a minute, but I think with little kids, the thing that you have to be very diligent about is figuring out when you're going to have you time. Or adult time, or whatever that looks like, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think that also helps solve part of that problem, because we just get all wrapped up in trying to do everything for everybody and nothing for us.
There's right. More. Yeah. So the options thing, if you think about a school day though, I think, and Meg's youngest daughter, Peyton, is a chaos kid. She likes freedom. She likes to make her own schedule. She likes to do her own thing. I think though, that if you might like, she's essentially somewhat ADHD gifted brain. Yeah. Awesome. But it's also that, does she want to do everything she wants? Or maybe I don't know your kid well enough, but what I find is at school, what is her teacher doing to help keep her focused to do the thing? Because she doesn't get to just decide what she wants to do at school. Neither does Peyton. So the teachers have tools to help corral or focus, or maybe it's, okay, we're going to just spend 10 minutes on this thing, and then it's 10 minutes on the next, or whatever that might be. Because really, I think part of the challenge is that, we don't know how this shit's supposed to work. And I remember when Alex was younger, really me being really frustrated about not getting how she worked. It's been a little better now because she's older and she communicates better. But for me, I always feel like the more kids crave more structure now, whether it's Meg's version for Peyton, which is you have until 2:00 or whatever the time is to get your stuff done. That's the window, or but I still think there is something to be said about people respond to structure. Now, if there's too much structure, then she'll tell you, and maybe that's the fight that you're fighting right now. You should just call me later, we can talk it through, but I don't know your daughter well enough, or what you've been trying to do. But so I think that's the secret, is what we've been seeing really most of the time is there's not enough structure. So there's not a plan and communicated. So Alex knows that at noon she gets to go inside. We have lunch, and then at 1 o'clock she goes with Cappy to whatever he's doing, and then he shows up back with her at 5 o'clock, and then we have dinner, and then we actually are doing yoga. We're on the yoga mats by 5:30, and that's what everyone hits at 5:30, and so then we have dinner and whatever. So every day is the same for her. Now she has different studies and she has different activities maybe, but she knows where she's going to be all day long. So I think writing that plan down is a good idea. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So a lot of what we've been talking about is know your resources and know your kids. So, can you call your teacher, ask them for guidance on, how did you work with Peyton in the classroom? Or if you've been in their classroom with them, if you went and read a book and you noticed how the teacher, interacted with the kids or engaged them, and whatever resonated the most with your kid, mimic those things, do those things. Teachers, as we're all finding out, I knew this because I have 2 cousins and a sister who are teachers. But teachers are really awesome at things that the rest of us are not. So pay attention to what they're doing and what they tell you, because they aren't just wizards at helping kids through workbooks. They really, truly are educational and emotional counselors for our kids. And so they know our kids really, really well. There's all kinds of resources online too. You can watch YouTube videos on how to use the Pearson website, which is a big one that a lot of schools are using, and all the other websites that they're using. And there's other resources out there for kids who are younger, things that they can be doing, ABC Mouse, and there's I had my kids watch there's some educational program, and Joby as a baby loved it. She just was totally zone out and watch it. I think that's why she's so smart now. So know your resources.
Baby Mozart.
Yeah. No, that's what it was. Know your resources and know your kids. They're different, just like adults. They're all different. And so know what's going to work for them. Build plans around that. The other thing that we talked about was sort of changing any or thinking differently. If this is different than where you're already at, think a little bit differently about your family, and think of it more as a team, like a sports team, where everybody has, there might be, Rachel said, there might be a team captain, but you have to have all the players and everyone has to be working together in order for the team to be successful. So as parents, we take on a lot of responsibility. We got to have dinner ready. We have to do the laundry. We have to manage the temperature in the house. We have to like it's all the little tiny things that you find. We have to pick up the little clumps of dog hair from our new puppy. That's not personal. There's just all these little tiny things that we're doing. And if you have little kids, then you say, go pick up your room. And they're like, okay. And then you go in there and they have put all of the stuff out of the bathtub in their room. For whatever reason, they thought they were being helpful, but now that gives you an extra chore. So, but it's important to think about how you can utilize your family, particularly your children, as part of your team. So you can be the captain of the team, but you can also give them chores and things to do. And don't let little kids spoof you. If they can walk, they can do little things. And even if it's not that helpful to you, it at least engages them and gives them something else to do besides bug you for at least 5 minutes.
Well, sometimes you have to do it with them, but at least you're doing something constructive with them. Because I know sometimes we go back to this mode of you feel like all you're doing is yelling, or you feel like all you're doing is correcting. I have to remind my boyfriend, not every situation is a life lesson. Sometimes she just messes up. Sometimes you just let it go and say, don't do it again. Okay, high five, let's go on. So one thing I really want to say that keeps cropping up in both your language and some of what we're seeing in the chat is, there's no failing right now. You're not failing. You're not failing at anything. You're managing, you're surviving this thing, right? So if you're going to say, listen, let's load the dishwasher together, and that takes an hour because a kid's helping, but you have fun and you're silly and you spray with water and whatever, and that means that you don't get to do something else, freaking great. So part of this is, I feel like there's just a lot of, we feel like we're failing all the time at everything a little bit. And I think part of a reframe needs to be, there is no failing. There's managing, right? So if you can't get to the job you're supposed to do for work, you need to talk to your boss about what you can actually do. Or your kid's struggling with math and you need to talk to your teacher, which means you're not going to be able to make the meeting today. Whatever. Like, there's no failing. So try to take a step back and maybe take not ego is such a negative word, but take your feelings out of it, maybe set it aside and say, okay, what can we do differently to make the situation more effective, happier, funner, change the way we're seeing it? Because what we see is people dig in, right? Like, no, we have to do it this way. And really, you don't have to. You don't have to do it anyway. This is going to last like 2 months, 3 months, maybe give or take a little longer. Your kid will be fine. Your kid's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. So there's very little about failing here. There's ways you can change it up. There's things you can try. And so I just want to make sure that we take the fail out of the vocabulary, because you're not going to fail as a parent. They're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think when you have moments of feeling like you're failing, think about yourself as your best friend who's calling you and saying, oh my God, I'm failing because X. Right. What's the first thing you'd say to them? You're not failing. You're amazing. And this is really hard. So have that conversation with yourself. Or if you can't, then call your friend and say, oh my God, I think I'm failing. And if your friend says, yes, you are, then hang up and don't be friends with that person anymore, because nobody needs that in their life.
We got a Q&A one. It's so hard when my 5-year and 9-year-old both need help with homework 2 to 3 hours. Plus I have to work. My time with them is fighting over schoolwork or them an iPad so I can get my work done. They have to get work done so they can earn lunch with teacher on Fridays. Yeah. Well, there are a couple of things to think about here. What I would say, ask for help from the teacher. Call your teacher and say, this is crazy, or I need more help, or what would you recommend? Like, because I think a lot of us are trying to, and you have 2. I was talking to somebody who had 5 kids, and they don't, like, who has 5 devices even? Like, blah. So what might really help is to have that structure and just say, you know what, I need to be a teacher for 4 hours. So what if you just said, I have to be a teacher for 4 hours in a day, 2 hours with one, 2 hours with the other one. How would you structure the rest of your day? Because right now what you're probably doing is trying to do it both and all at the same time, and it's just making everyone nuts, right? So maybe if you said, okay, from 8 to 10, it's Joey's turn, and let's see if you gave names. From 8 to 10, it's the 5-year-old's turn, and from 10 to noon, it's the 9-year-old's turn. Meanwhile, the 5-year-old's going to go watch TV or play Legos or whatever the heck they do at 5. And then in the afternoon, the 9 and 5-year-old are going to go play in the other downstairs, because the 9-year-old's old enough to keep an eye on things, and that's going to give me time to work. So like, if you literally said, okay, I know what they need. Maybe that's not possible, but it might be some way to just start thinking about it and restructuring all the things, because just trying to lay it out like that might get your brain working in a different way and having you see opportunities. So, Shanny's saying that she actually reached out to her teacher and asked for other options, and that really helped.
I think, another important thing to think about is it's probably really good to provide that sort of feedback to the teachers, because this is new for them too.
Yes.
And so if they're trying to do things to engage the kids in a healthy and active way, but maybe it's too much, really, and they don't really know. They're like, well, geez, before I was with all of these kids for 8 hours a day plus, and now how do I mimic that when I can't see them? And I do think too, like what I actually had a conversation with my daughter's teacher, and she said, it's really hard to think about that. These kids don't have recess. They don't have lunchtime. They don't have second recess and snack time and art and music and all this stuff. And when you really boil it down, she said, actual educational engagement is maybe 4 hours a day for average, probably for a lot of students who are younger than high school. And so she said, when I started thinking about that, I thought, gosh, now I'm expecting these parents to be able to do all of that for 3 or 4 hours a day and work and, get them outside and do all this stuff. So I think giving those teachers that feedback so that they know what's working and what's not. Like I would say, I really appreciate the motivational part about having lunch with the teacher on Fridays, but that is not helping. Like, can we do a star chart instead and you will mail us lollipops, or I don't know, whatever the suggestion is.
Or everyone gets lunch with teacher on Fridays, because that's really what they want. And then is there another way to track the accountability, right? Because what a nightmare to have add this stress of doing 3 hours of work every day, or you don't get to see your teacher. Oh my God, that's like crippling. That'd be crippling for my 11-year-old. So I think it's really important to give that feedback and say that that's really adding a lot, because in our school district, we're doing pass-fail grades. We're not even doing grades because people are having a hard time, getting the kids what they need and having the right devices and the internet and all that stuff. So every school is dealing very differently with it. And I would definitely push back on that teacher and say, this is adding we already are so stressed out. It's adding a whole other layer. So I guess one of the things I made a note here too is ask for help. So, they're trying their best, but they don't really know what your home situation is. And they're probably thinking sort of in their classroom, it would look like this. And so pushing back and asking for help. And the more people ask for help, and Meg actually gave this advice in the last live we did just about an hour ago, which was maybe there's other parents that are having the same struggle. And if 5 of you came to that teacher and said, listen, I've been talking to other parents and we're all struggling with this, maybe that's a better way, or maybe you'd feel more comfortable talking to other parents about what to do and how to modify what's going on, so that it feels, because we want our kids to be excited about school and excited about learning. And this is a lot of what's going on right now, is just making them just making it miserable. Another thought I had too about the 5 and the 9-year-old is there anything the 9-year-old can do to help the 5-year-old? Because in one-room schoolhouses back in the day, they actually did that a lot, where the older kids helped the younger kids with some stuff. So, and I would think the 9-year-old, if they're like most older siblings, would probably love to help. So, so that might be an idea. I don't know if that would work for you or what your kids are like, but it might be something fun to try.
Yeah. The last piece of our message, I guess, the tips we have for you is really around making sure that you make time for you. And that for folks, that kind of the discussion we had about this is that's a challenge for everybody pre-COVID. Now it's a bigger challenge because it's literally not an option in a lot of ways. For people that are more team driven, more oriented to collaborating, meeting up with friends, game night, family game night, but now it seems like a real chore because I just spent 4 hours teaching 4th grade geometry that I couldn't do when I was in 4th grade or high school for that matter, let alone now. And so it's like, do you then want to sit down and play Monopoly with that 9-year-old? Absolutely not. You don't even want to have to see him anymore, which makes you feel like a jerk. But so for people who are team driven, who like to be in groups of people, that option has been, obviously social distancing says it all, taken out of ways for you to get refresh and get time to yourself. So really thinking about other ways that you can refresh. For me, because I'm self-driven, I don't feel inspired or motivated necessarily or refreshed by being in big groups of people. I like to go out for a run by myself. That's how I do it. So for me, it's a little bit easier because I don't miss the people parts of it. But if you miss the people parts of it, what can you do to kind of refresh and reinvigorate that? And maybe it's something where this is not a thing that I normally do, but I was invited to be in this virtual happy hour last week, which I was sort of dreading because networking is not, it's not really a thing that I love to do, but it was actually kind of fun. It was fun to just talk to a bunch of other people. We still ended up talking about COVID and all the changes and whatever, but just talking to somebody else, not my boyfriend, not my kids, not my family, just people. And I spent an hour doing that, and I kind of felt like, God, I don't have an hour. Like, I've been working all day. I got to make dinner. I want to go for a run. But taking the time to do that actually refreshed me. And so I think really message is two parts. If you're team driven and you can't find those people opportunities, make them. You can figure out how to make them. Zoom is a really wonderful tool, as you can see here. And second message is you make the time. You have to make the time. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can be 5 minutes of sitting outside on your step, and you tell your spouse, those kids cannot come out of this house and see me. If you don't have a spouse to do that, lock them in the closet. They'll be fine for 5 whole minutes, or in the bathroom. Maybe it's safer. I don't know, but you figure out how to make time for yourself. That is how you can be a better person for all the people in your life.
Yeah. One of the ways that I always did it when Alex was really little is I had a very early and routine bedtime. So my time to me was after she went to bed. So she still goes to bed at 8, or goes upstairs at 8, in bed by 8:30, and she's 11. She had like a 7 o'clock bedtime for a really long time. So for me, it was, I had grown up time after she went to bed. And again, that might be when you have to do your work, or maybe it's when you just want to veg out in front of the TV. But one of the things that Meg is alluding to that I think is really important, and I'm going to just make a little bit finer point of it, is we are overwhelmed by stress and anxiety and cortisol and adrenaline and negative. And if adrenaline is constant, then it becomes negative, right? So we are overwhelmed by all this negative body chemistry. And it's really hard sometimes to get ourselves through that just by deciding. And so one of the things you can do is kind of trick your body into making happy hormones, right? So that's, Meg just talked about going for a run. Sometimes it's, for me, music is a huge deal. Singing, performing music is great. One of the things that I love is having a dance party with my kid. So like especially if there's like some kind of, like, she's not, like, if I'm really frustrated with her or she's really having a hard day, then we take a break and we have a dance party we each get to pick 2 songs and we dance party like crazy. And you can pick silly songs, you can pick pump up songs, and it's just a hoot. And so and then that gives you your body chemistry, that gives you happy hormones, right? So, and sometimes that's exercise, dancing, singing, whatever it might be. So that's a big piece of it, is know your body chemistry, or trick your body chemistry by giving yourself happiness. That's what I remember when I was nursing. I would thought, I'm going to be this nasty bitch because if I don't get enough sleep, I am mean. Well, then you nurse in the middle of the night. Well, that releases happy hormones. And so then I didn't really mind that much being up in the middle of the night, even though I thought before I had a baby, I would might be like crazy mean. All right. So
I'll paraphrase.
Okay, please. We have another question. Meg's reading.
Yeah. So what Becky's saying is basically she has her daughter all the time. And by the time the evening comes around, she's so exhausted, she just can't even really think. Like to used to go for walks in the evening, but now it's like, yeah, no, thank you. Not ever again. So,
just stay
in. What I would say, when you're a new mom, they give you the advice of sleep when the baby sleeps. And I got tired enough at one point that I actually did that. So I started taking naps, and it made a world of difference. Well, okay, you have a 2-year-old or whatever Rachel said at the beginning, Becky, and not a baby anymore, but who cares? Like, my kids wear me out. They're 10 and 11 years old. Sometimes I just need a moment of nothingness. So I'll go lay on my bed for 15 minutes or sit out in the lawn chair in the yard or whatever. So my first thing would be take 10 minutes and rest while she's napping, and don't feel guilty about that. Yes, she's napping. So you're like, oh, I got all this stuff I can get done now. Yes, you can, but you can also get it done tomorrow or later, because at least being able to feel like you can engage with your husband when he gets home is better, than constantly feeling like you're failing everywhere. So that would be my first piece of advice. Another thing that I have done at different parts in my life, just based on time needs and whatever. If you really like to go for walks, but in the afternoon you're just bushed and you can't do it, it might be a good idea to get up early in the morning before the baby gets up. If you've got a spouse at home who can stay home with the kid or kids, then you can go for a walk. Again, doesn't have to be a long walk. It could just be around your block. But it will feel, I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either.
It will feel really amazing. And so maybe it's that if the walk part is what's getting you and you're feeling like I'm missing out on that thing for me, maybe do it in the morning. And then you've got that kind of checked out, so that even if you're tired in the evening, you're not also feeling sad or guilty for not going for your walk too.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that every day, and frankly, you mentioned that the last few days don't have the energy and you're probably feeling like it's a beautiful day, I want to go out. But frankly, what might be happening is maybe you're just extra tired, because sometimes you just need more sleep. And it might be your cycle, it might be we're slaves to our biochemistry, right? So it might be your cycle, it might be that you're just not sleeping that well. I tell you, I feel like I'm dealing with all of this COVID stuff pretty well. Like, our business is forward looking and we're being proactive, but we're being really careful. But frankly, all of that is like, I think, chewing away at our subconscious all the time. And so I've been sleeping way more than I have been before. Like, I can usually go for 6.5, 7 hours and I'm pretty good, but I've been literally minimum of 8 hours of sleep lately. And I'm still really fitful and not sleeping well. So it could just be that you just need a little more sleep. And so maybe the trick is either you take that nap when you're feeling exhausted during your husband's making dinner or whatever that looks like, strap that baby in a high chair and let him have the baby in the kitchen and you go take a nap, or jump in the shower or whatever might refresh you. So again, it's important to listen to yourself and again, look at your schedule with curiosity about how can I rearrange this a little bit to make it work better for me right now. And that might change over time, or it might change depending on what's going on. But I think just kind of staying in that state of curiosity and reflecting how you can change, because again, there's no failing. It's how can you change up what you're doing to make things go a little easier.
Awesome.
Right. How are we doing time?
Good.
Any other questions? I guess one thing I would just say too is that if you're worried about work and getting work done, check in with your boss, check in with your team, check in with your leader or your staff, depending on what role you play, and be really transparent and open about, okay, start narrowing down all the things you feel like you have to do for work into like, what are the 3 things that I now need to work on today or this week or get done? And that way, when you go to your computer or you have a chance to sit down, you know exactly what you're going to do and knock it out. Instead of sitting down going, oh God, there's 1,000 emails and now what am I doing? And, try to really stay, because you can't fix all of that right now. You just can't. And so what are the things that are critically important to your team, to your work, to getting done? And that way you can feel like you're accomplishing those things too. You can check, oh yeah, I crossed this off my list, instead of feeling like you're never quite getting enough done. So be sure you're communicating and working with your leadership and your staff and your HR people or whatever you feel like you need to do to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for complete failure, because that doesn't work with anybody really.
Yep.
I also did want to give a little tip that I got from a friend of mine in Australia. She does not have a very big house. And so she just works like at the end of a table in her living room, kind of on a side table. And so for her, she was having a hard time disconnecting from work and like making that mental adjustment from not work to work and then leaving it. And so what she's doing is she's like putting a tablecloth or something over her workspace so that she can leave her mouse out and her notes and her keyboard and stuff, but then she just covers it. And for her, that's like her brain signal of putting that away, and then I'm going to go do something else. And then when she comes back, she takes that off and works. So that might be and Meg mentioned that she was shutting the door of her office because for some reason, maybe that's her way of saying, no, we're done with that. And going this other way. So that's another maybe fun little tip to try when you have to compartmentalize your space a little bit, if you don't really have the space. So, we have another one. Oh, this is a great one. Resentful of my husband who's working all day, call center from home, and then gets to be the fun guy with the kids in the afternoon. I feel like I have to be the bossy principal, and he's the fun PE teacher. So I guess the question is, can you reframe that in your brain to say, I get to spend this time with my kids and help them through all this and make this really meaningful? And then let him have the fun kid time. But also, how do you have fun with them when you have them in the morning? So how can you turn it from being this onerous chore into a little more fun time? And so I totally get that, because that's how a lot of the dynamic happens. But I think a lot of that's because we kind of put that in our head that we have to be the teacher. And you mentioned that you are a teacher, you've been a teacher. So you might be slipping into teacher mode, and that's not fun. But is there a way that you can insert some fun into that morning so that you feel like it's more of an engaged and just more positive experience for everybody, instead of it having to be kind of this slave driver kind of thing?
What I want to know is, why the hell can't he teach math in the afternoon? Like, what? That is a conversation for another glass of wine. But
maybe it's it's for right now.
My suggestion would be, can you modify the way the educational schedule is set up so that maybe you share those responsibilities? Because I'm telling you, I agree with Rachel, make it fun if you can, but there's nothing fun about fourth grade geometry. Like, I couldn't think of, I said to Peyton, like, okay, if we were building a barn, and so I kind of made it about something outside and whatever, but sorry, you can't make that fun enough to not be stressful. So anyway, I think that, maybe it's that you look at sharing those responsibilities and managing it that way. And because I don't know why he wouldn't be doing some of it. He could.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I just assumed that you'd already had that conversation, because that would be the very first conversation I would have had is, so how do we split this thing? Because I'm not going to do all of this. So I just assumed that was already the compromise that had been struck. So if you haven't had that conversation, if you live with other grownups in your house, I don't care if they're working or not, full-time or half-time, split that shit up. Especially or if we had another question about, well, the husband makes dinner, but I'm with the kid all the time. You get to leave the house at 9:00 and he can manage the kid for an hour. I don't care what you do. Go sit in your car and read a book or whatever. Like, if you are struggling and you have another adult in the house that can't absolutely be having conversations, and don't make it a big blow up fight. Make it hey, here's a logistics problem. I love you, you love me, we love our children. How can we make this feel more balanced for me? Because I'm really stressing out. And for sure, be talking to other adults.
Here's one of my sneaky tricks, not to encourage bad behavior in a relationship.
I can't wait to hear what this is going to be.
I just, if my boyfriend and I are both in the house, when the question arises of, Mom, what's the difference between an isosceles triangle and a
equilateral triangle?
Yeah, sure. I say, hey, you know what? Quillen is great at that kind of math. You should ask him. So you can engage them in a way that doesn't bring up some big fight or some big conversation. And obviously not in your situation. You can't say, go ask your dad while he's on the phone working. Right. But if you're both available at some point in time, or maybe in your case, you say, you know what, your dad really loves to do that kind of work. Maybe you can ask him later. Because that seemed to work for me, because then there didn't have to be discussion, because I know that my boyfriend is not a jerk, and that he's not thinking like, I'm not going to help those kids with anything. It just doesn't come to mind, so that was a way to not have to have some big drawn out ridiculous conversation that you should have already had. But if you didn't and you want to avoid it further, that's a healthy way, perhaps.
I'm not sure that's healthy. I mean, I would be like, listen, I'm more order tolerant than Meg. So I can see where
what?
I'm more chaos tolerant.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry. I'm more chaos tolerant than Meg. So I would just be like, hey, Cappy, I can't deal with this right now. Will you please work with Alex? Because my brain is not working. But that might work too. More order tolerant people, on both sides on that one.
Another thing that a girlfriend of mine did this, or we still have some time. A girlfriend of mine has little kiddos who are like 3 and 4, 2.5 and 4 something. And she's working full time. Her husband is working outside of the house. And her mom is a retired teacher. And so her mom said, hey, I don't know how well this will work, but if we could, you know, if you can put the boys on the phone with me and we can FaceTime, or if I can, whatever, pick your poison, Zoom call, Skype, whatever you want to do. And if I can engage them somehow for a few minutes or hours, depending on the age of the kids, and help you out that way and do some education or some help with the school part of it. That's another resource that some people are latching onto. So, you know, you think about retired people, you know, maybe parents, maybe grandparents.
Other moms in your kids' class are probably having the same challenge. Maybe you could trade off.
Yeah. So I think thinking about, you know, who else could help and be teaching, because they don't have anything to do and they're not supposed to go anywhere and they miss their grandkids. So any kind of opportunity for them to see their grandkids is going to be double bonus. So I would say if you've got older people in your family that you can lean on, or people who aren't working from home, maybe they've been laid off right now, lean on them. Which reminds me, I have a sister who's a grade school teacher used to be a grade school teacher who's not working right now.
There you go. Well, I think that's an important thing, because there is a weird dynamic between moms and kids and all of that, right? And that's sometimes hard to overcome. And so totally different dynamic between grandma and kid. And so I think that's a really smart suggestion, to get them on the Zoom and try to, or whatever, and try to make that happen, or the phone or whatever. And frankly, if you did it again, if you created that as a structure, every Tuesday and Thursday, or Monday and Tuesday, or whatever, that your kids know they're going to get to see grandma and help with homework, they're going to run to that damn phone or to the Zoom to get that work done. And then that gives you a break if they're old enough for that. The ones with the babies can't really give that up through Zoom. So that one is Benadryl, a little whiskey.
I'm just kidding, kind of.
We don't really do that, but you want to. So again, I try to really just go sit on the porch with your kid. If you have to have hands on them or be very close, try to be outside with them. That helps a lot. Just getting fresh air and changing your environment. I remember feeling trapped in my house when my daughter was young, and I hated that feeling because you do. So, try to get support from other moms, try to talk to people. Most of us that are really struggling are feeling the need for more interaction. So don't be afraid to reach out, because everyone else is feeling the same way. I have a friend who always says, I would love to talk to you more, but I'm always afraid that you're too busy to talk, because clearly our lives are insane. And I said, I never too busy. That's what Marco Polo's for, right? I don't know if you guys use Marco, but you leave video messages for each other. And it's kind of dreamy, because she can literally leave me a 15-minute video message, unburden all the things that she's worrying about. And then I can get back to her when I have a chance and still have that engagement. And so, leverage technology, reach out to people. Do not be afraid. Do not be alone. And do not be alone and feel like you're alone in this, because as we're finding, we had, 7 people on today, and we probably are all sharing some aspect of all of these things. So reach out, create support groups, call Rachel. I'll send you to Rachel Day at Elevate Rapid City. Talk to her. And we're always happy. I always say that I'm a team-driven person. I don't never get enough connection. So reach out to me, or reach out to whoever makes sense in your life. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all this wicked great engagement today.
Yeah, I love it.
It makes our job lots easier.
And lots more fun.
Yeah.
So take care, everybody, and hang in there. We'll be able to hug each other at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah, hugging. What?
Oh, the event. Oh, yeah. Well, Shelly's over here. Our GM is telling us that we should plug our event next week, which is we're doing an hour-long Zoom call every day, starting at 1 p.m. Mountain. And it is crazy fun. It's about balancing accountability and empathy, which is basically what we've been talking about today, just in a business context. So you're welcome to join us there. All of the things, if you go out to our Facebook pages, our websites, our website, our LinkedIn, all of that is, it's called the business continuity blueprint, balancing accountability and empathy during the COVID-19 crisis. So we talked a lot more about structure and a lot more about understanding people and how to balance all of that, and that'll happen all next week. So if you really want to just jump in and meet people and learn something new, you should check that out for sure. So
yeah.
All right.
So the outro that Rachel Day shared with us that you don't know about.
Oh yeah, I don't know anything about it.
You don't read your emails. That's the problem.
Rachel could do the outro.
So if you would like to see some more of these webinars that Elevate Rapid City has put on, you can find them on the Elevate Rapid City YouTube page. And if you want to see events coming up, friendly reminder, they're on the Elevate Rapid City Facebook page. I'm sure you'll see more of us, which might be good news for you or might be a week to skip.
That's right.
Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you around the Zoom calls.
Yep. Bye, everybody.